Well, go ahead.
Having said that, we are looking at a variety of programs, funding mechanisms, competitive grants, ways to leverage the money so that we can achieve the state's existing policy goals, the 33% RPS, energy efficiency goals, energy security goals, energy storage, which this legislature passed last year. But there are areas of technology development and research that the private sector simply doesn't fill or doesn't fill without stimulus from the government. And we found that it's very much true in the clean energy field. There is research being done by the private sector, but it isn't necessarily cross-sector. It isn't necessarily targeted to achieving the state's current policy goals. And it isn't always the most efficient. For example, under the PEER Small Grants Program, it's been highly leveraged, the funding, and created thousands and thousands of jobs with a relatively small amount of money. So we don't think this is in place of private sector funding or necessarily other programs, but we think that this fills a very important piece of our clean energy economy, and that if we leverage this money well, we really can accomplish many times the benefits back in comparison to the cost to ratepayers. And that's what we've seen so far, is that the energy efficiency standards that we've been able to adopt as a result of research done under the PEER program, the renewable energy technologies, the benefits back to ratepayers have been many times what they've put into these programs, which is not to say they can't be improved, but that we think the benefits do far outweigh the costs. And
it's a valid point where some industries need to have possibly some subsidies and so forth, and you can subsidize in different ways, tax credits or whatever it might be. So that's a valid point. And my question might be, how long does this go on then? Because it was, I think, started in 1996, I believe. It's a long time. So is there an end game here to where you may not need this any longer?
We think that there should be, and we're seeing a drop into subsidies needed for many clean energy technologies, and actually the administration would really like to structure the programs going forward in a way that the clear goal is self-sustaining technologies in the future, that we really do achieve market transformation. And again, we think it's critical to use the money to leverage it as highly as possible, because $1 invested in a new technology or an energy efficiency retrofit is nowhere near as $1 that leverages $5 or $10 from the private sector or the federal government or other entities. So that is a very clear goal for the administration, to move to a point where these technologies are self-sustaining without public assistance or ratepayer assistance.
And how do you tell when you get to that point?
Whether they're economically competitive. And so, for instance, in the solar industry, the California Solar Initiative and the committee, staff, consultant, and others in the room know far more about it than I do, or the PUC, but the subsidy has been going down because the costs are coming down, and it's a performance-based subsidy. And so we are looking to things like that as a model for helping technologies sort of cross the hurdle. I think there's a term in the venture capital world, in the research area, it's the valley of death. But get them to a point where they are self-sustaining and subsidies are no longer necessary. I think that is in everyone's interest here, and it's a clear priority for us, given that we have very limited funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Standy. Before we continue, I just wanted to bring to the close the voting portion for the bill portion of the hearing, and just report back that all the bills that are out, SB 315-0, SB 44, 15-0. SB 216, 15-0. SB 343, 10-5. SB 489, 13-0. SB 489, SB 585, 11-2. And SB 705, 13-2. We left the voting open for 10 minutes, so we've exceeded that time. So the voting portion of this hearing is now closed. So you can continue.
Actually, I think it's if you or any other members of the committee have any more questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Any more questions for Ms. Levin? Well, I would kind of like follow along the same lines, and understanding that what we've seen with the public goods funds over the last 15 years, as you stated, has led to a lot of innovation and advances in this area. And I guess my challenge as it moves forward is to make sure that it is directed and honed in to those areas that have gone untapped in some of the lower income communities and making sure that those energy efficiency programs are reached. And I'm just trying to make sure as the discussion goes on today that we kind of expand upon that on how we can make better penetration in some of the underserved communities to kind of like answer some of Mr. Nastandi's questions as to how long and how do we determine who's benefiting and who's not benefiting from this. So as we continue the discussion today, thank you.
Sure, I do. I mean, the thoughts that Assemblymember Nastandi brought up, I think are important. I would, before asking a question, I would just sort of point out that particularly if we're talking about energy efficiency or technologies that are developed that lead to energy efficiency, the purpose is not just an ideological one of shifting the kind of energy that we use, but it is also a financial investment. Building any new power plant as we use more energy in this state is more expensive than energy efficiency even under current terms. So the more we can perfect that technology, the more we can move that technology, the more money that the ratepayers will save. And I think that's why we do want to differentiate this from just a tax. It needs to be a ratepayer fee that is for the benefit of ratepayers. And I think that's really an intent that I have. I want it to be as difficult to rate as possible because it should be a ratepayer fee for the benefit of ratepayers, and also that we demonstrate what that benefit is, which I think is the chair's intention of having the committee hearing. I guess my question is, would be great if we had time to detail a little bit more about what you would say is the advantages of wading into local government permitting with you know, I do have an experience in this, which is largely one of, you know, I come from the city of Santa Barbara where, you know, we kind of invented making life difficult with aesthetic requirements for permitting. And that being said, we have a beautiful city because of it, but we have the the current situation where, you know, solar is not supposed to be a discretionary decision by cities, yet cities often treat it as if it is a discretionary decision by putting aesthetic requirements on it. And I mean, how do we wade into that, or do we just wade into it? I guess I wanted more detail on that.
So a number of counties in California right now are facing an onslaught of applications for large-scale renewable energy development in the desert, for repowering, like the Altamont Pass. Some of the counties in San Joaquin Valley are looking at a number of large-scale solar developments. And so some of what we were thinking is that we just need to help local governments to increase their capacity to handle all of this. We also hope to do more than just increase their capacity, but use some of this funding to help consolidate, streamline, reduce duplication, encourage permitting agencies to work more cooperatively, to do permitting concurrently instead of consecutively. We hear horror stories about, applicants who want to cite good projects, and not all projects should be permitted, but the ones that should, that spend years and finally get through what they think is the last permit, and then there turns out to be another permit that they have to get. And so we think that there is a way to improve the permitting process to help businesses and projects move forward much more quickly without ignoring environmental impacts or impacts on important farmland and other resources, but without all the waste and duplication. And we think that is going to take some amount of assistance to local governments who just really don't have any capacity to do it now.
Sure. I guess I'm hoping that we would differentiate between rooftop solar and other generation projects in that work, because it is the decision of this legislature and the state that rooftop solar shouldn't be discretionary, that it should not be optional for a local government to approve or not. And I guess my point is that local governments by that permitting process are frustrating the will of the people of California, and that we should not subsidize their frustrating of the will of the people of California. So I could see trying to help the permitting process of larger projects that are actually discretionary, but I would, feel like we should come up with a better program on how to deal with root permitting of rooftop solar, because frankly, there should be less of a permitting process. I'm starting to sound like a Republican here. This is really strange.
Well, and so will I. I think that we would agree with you, and I think one of the other things we would like to do with it, I think it would be a relatively small amount of this funding, is actually come up with model permitting ordinances. So there is a more standard template. A solar installer who works across county lines shouldn't have to deal with a stack of paper like this in one county and a stack like this in another, and yet a completely different stack in a third county. So I think that we would agree with you. These are different challenges, and we would like to tackle both.
In the interest of time, we're going to move to our next panel. I'm going to thank you for your participation, and I hope that you're staying just in case some additional questions come up. Next, we're going to have the utilities and renewable energy companies, and we have a slew of folks here. Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern California Edison, Randy Chin, Valerie Torella from PG&E, Sempra Energy. I think Heidi's still here. California Municipal Utilities Association, the Solar Alliance, California Solar Energy Industry Association, California Biomass Energy Alliance, California Agriculture Energy Association, and Altergy Systems. That's an interesting name. Okay, so Mr. Chin, just you can begin and introduce yourselves, and we'll just go around the table.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Randy Chin with Southern California Edison. In the interest of time, the lateness of the afternoon, the three IOUs have coordinated our presentations, and so we're going to divvy up the different pieces and talk to you about some policy considerations we think you ought to keep in mind. At Edison, and this is true for the other IOUs, our primary job, our imperative is to provide safe and reliable electric service at affordable rates. And the way we accomplish that is we have to balance safety, reliability, and affordability with other public policy concerns that are raised. When those policy concerns are already being addressed in a regulatory arena, then the question is whether it's necessary to also do it in legislation. So in the case of these public goods charge funded programs for energy efficiency, renewable energy, residential solar, and research and development, we are asking ourselves, does the policy interest outweigh the affordability concerns of doing these things in a bill? Our customers pay roughly $160 million a year in public goods charges, and so we think it's a pretty serious question, and we're thinking about it seriously. And we'd ask you to do the same as you proceed. Focusing sort of specifically on the research program. If there's a need to continue such a program, we think that there are some reforms that would be useful so that customers get more bang for their buck out of the program. The reforms are, and you've heard this one earlier today on some of the legislation, we want to make sure the funds are safe from transfer for other purposes. We want to make sure the funds are being used for research. We want to focus the activities of the research program on things that will help us achieve the ambitious energy goals that the legislature has set out for us, like a 33% RPS. We want to be much more involved in the administration of the R&D program in recognition of our unique experience with the electric grid and electric grid operations. We think some reasonable amount of money ought to be set aside for the investor-owned utilities. So understanding that we now have every incentive to get research done in order to meet these ambitious energy goals. We think that all California energy customers ought to be contributing to this program. The municipal utility customers don't yet. And then we think that program administration ought to be streamlined to get faster decisions, reduce the overhead costs. So we think it's a really important question to understand whether we want to extend this public goods charge program or not, particularly in these times. And we look forward to working with all of you as we work on this in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Valerie Torella, Pacific Gas and Electric Company. And just adding on to my colleagues' comments, once again, the funding mechanism. It's important that we think the legislature consider the policy and the policy as a funding mechanism that may have actually outlived its purpose, as we've seen it's been subject to budget raids. And Mr. Chair, as you offered a little bit of background, we know the legislature established the PGC in 1996 under AB 1890. They subsequently, in 2000, it was extended. And that was because we were under a deregulated market where policymakers wanted to ensure that public goods programs were actually conducted by the IOUs. And much has changed over the last 10 years. As we're moving towards a clean energy future, several policies that have been implemented over the last 10 years. The RPS was created, it was accelerated, and now we've established a 33% RPS. AB 32 in 2006, smart grid policies are just some examples of how we've transformed energy policy in the last 10 years. Another example is the Energy Action Plan, which places energy efficiency at the top of the loading order. And this is a fundamental shift in California that happened to implement energy efficiency measures first to meet energy demand prior to procuring generated energy. This has successfully integrated energy efficiency as a resource in the IOU procurement planning. So mechanically, what does this mean? It has resulted in 2 funding streams for energy efficiency that where the second funding stream outside of the public goods charge vastly surpasses the PGC. So California's strong leadership in energy efficiency and achieving our energy efficiency goals, which are very aggressive, is actually not dependent upon the energy efficiency portion of the PGC. Our energy efficiency programs should not be constrained. The PUC should continue to maintain their flexibility to determine funding areas and allocations through their open and public process and with their oversight over the IOUs.
Heidi Berstoli on behalf of San Diego Gas and Electric. The goal of the Renewable Resources Trust Fund has been to optimize investment in renewable energy to develop a self-sustaining California renewable energy market. And in regard to the Emerging Renewables Program portion of the RRTF, Emerging Renewables now offers rebates for renewable fuel cells and small wind systems. And the primary goal of the Emerging Renewables Program is to develop a self-sustaining market for emerging renewable energies in distributed generation applications. And to that end, it appears that the program has largely outlived its purpose. Funds for this program have been frozen because recent wind applications qualified for a level of rebates that would have completely funded the entire installation. We believe that's proof that the market is, in fact, now self-sustaining. On the New Solar Homes Partnership piece, that is part of the CSI, but the funding itself is collected under the Emerging Renewables Program with oversight by the CEC. If the New Solar Homes program is to be reauthorized, those funds should be protected from budget rates. On the existing renewables program, this allocates funds to increase the competitiveness of in-state renewable generating facilities that were operating prior to September 96. Most of the facilities receiving this production-based incentive are biomass facilities, and all of them have contracts with an IOU as part of RPS deliveries. Biomass has a legitimate role in meeting our RPS goals in the state. Now with the 33% RPS mandate, perhaps the legislature should now consider moving toward more transparency in pricing, such as other non-RPS fuels. If the program or related program is authorized by the legislature, those funds must also be protected from general fund raids. On the safety of the funds, it's a common theme you'll hear from all the IOUs. Given the legislature's recent attempt to raid $155 million of the gas consumption surcharge funds, and divert those to the general fund, we must ensure that any public goods charge funds that are reauthorized are statutorily secure from diversion for any other purpose other than its intended use. The IOUs all appreciate the opportunity to comment on the future of the PGC, and while many of the programs funded by the PGC have merit of which we do support, we ask that the legislature review those merits of a funding mechanism which may have outlived its purpose in its current form and currently subjects our customers to raids on the funds that are collected.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. I'm Dave Modisett. I'm the Executive Director of the California Municipal Utilities Association. We represent over 40 local publicly owned electric utilities that provide electricity to over 1/4 of all Californians. I just have 3 short points I want to make today. I guess, first of all, the publicly owned utilities have a very similar statute to the investor-owned utilities. It directs our utilities to collect public goods charge funds and authorizes those funds to be spent at the same 4 categories as the IOUs: energy efficiency, low-income assistance, renewable energy sources, and research and development. From the beginning of this program, the publicly owned utilities have collectively spent over $2 billion. Number 2, unlike the investor-owned utilities, the publicly owned utility statute does not sunset. And we expect to continue administering these programs irrespective of whether the IOU Public Goods Charge Fund is reauthorized. And lastly, our utilities are very diverse and range from small rural to very large urban territories. And since publicly owned utilities are governed by their own elected governing boards, our programs are tailored to best meet the community's specific needs. It is this local control that has made our programs so successful. We believe that locally accountable officials are in the best position to determine how their ratepayers' money should be spent. We would be opposed to any proposals to transfer local ratepayer dollars to a state bureaucracy for administration. The current publicly owned utility statute for the public goods charge works very well, has for many years, and we support it in its current form. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Williams has a question.
Well, we have a kind of a quandary because as the status quo stands, one of your ratepayers can qualify for several of the different grants authorized by the public goods charge. And so essentially they can benefit for something that you, on their behalf, have never paid into. And that's something that the IOUs have pointed out, and that's a pretty tough question. I mean, do you have any suggestion on how to handle the fairness of your ratepayers profiting from something that they've never paid into, if this is supposed to be a ratepayer charge?
Sure, and I think you're referring to the public interest energy research charge.
They could also qualify for things out of our RTF or other elements of the charge, but specifically, there's many instances of peer.
Yeah, I think, I guess first of all, this is under the complete control of the Energy Commission. The Energy Commission can decide whether or not they want to accept an application from a municipal utility or not. We're only aware of 2 instances where a municipal utility has applied for peer funds.
No, I think you misunderstand my question. The question is that your ratepayers, not your members, your members' ratepayers can qualify. So I'm a company in the territory of one of your members. That company seeks to get grants for R&D, or say they're a agricultural operation that might get money out of the RRTF, or a housing development that might get money out of new solar homes. In any one of those instances, they've never paid into the pot but can draw from it. That's my question, not pertaining to grants directly to a utility.
Well, I guess I'm most familiar with the peer program, and again, that would be under the complete control of the Energy Commission. If the Energy Commission thinks that project is worthwhile, they can fund it or not. And remember, we have our own. All of our utilities have their own public interest energy research program also, so that ratepayer could come to us seeking grant funds as well.
I'm just asking you, do you think that we, the state, should fund your members, ratepayers, or not? You're saying it's up to the CEC. Well, should the CEC do it or not?
Well, it's a competitive process. I think it depends on whether or not the Energy Commission thinks that it is a worthwhile project or not.
No, well, all right. So you're saying if it's a great project, they should benefit for something that they've never paid into.
Well, the benefit that we're all striving for here is a benefit to the state of California. We're not striving to benefit that individual company. We're trying to provide benefits, to all ratepayers.
So the purpose is to benefit all the people of California.
Yes.
So why shouldn't your ratepayers pay into that benefit of R&D for all of the people of California?
Our ratepayers are paying into R&D. It's just that the programs are administered by our local governing boards and not by some state bureaucracy in Sacramento.
I guess I'm challenging you with that question because you've essentially argued for a one-way flow of funds, a flow of funds that only goes towards your members and the ratepayers of your members. Just hear me out for a second. And that's the problem of fairness. If you're a company that's not in your territory, you can only go for these grants that are statewide. If you are a company that is in one of your members' territory, they have the option of either going to your members or to statewide. And that is not fair.
Yeah, and I guess it's not a one-way flow because our programs can fund and do fund projects that are in investor-owned utility service areas. I mean, again, we are looking for companies that can develop the best projects, the best R&D projects, and that's not limited to our service territories. It could be anywhere in California. It could be in investor-owned utility service territories. So we have the same situation with our funds that you're describing for PEER.
That would be very interesting if you could outline to me grants that your members have made to companies and entities outside of their service area. I think that would be very useful information.
Certainly.
Thank you. Our next presenter.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry, I came early, so I didn't need to. I'm not part of the electric utility panel. So
Okay. Do we have anyone else that's part of the utilities or renewable energy companies?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Birmingham, and I represent the Solar Alliance. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. I'm going to be delivering some very brief comments on the New Solar Homes Partnership Program that's administered through the CEC. And as I'm sure you guys are aware, the program started fairly strong. In 2008, we saw reservations jump to 4,300 from the previous year of 500 applications. But then there was, of course, the financial market collapse and the housing collapse. And with that, builders were under pressure to cut costs for their developments. But we're just starting to see the solar market share growing again of the housing developments. As of January 2011, we have over 10,000 systems that are in lieu to get reservations, and we expect that the reservations will they're projected to be 4,000 reservations in 2011. And in just the past 5 months, the fourth largest builder, KB, has launched over 30 new solar communities in Southern California alone. So we're really starting to see this pick up again and the momentum to continue to grow. And one of the benefits, not only seeing more solar being installed in terms of these housing developments, we see more energy efficiency, because energy efficiency is one of the major components of the program. And in terms of the housing developments, energy efficiency is the #1 differentiator to the existing housing stock. And so we really see this marriage of solar and energy efficiency as driving policy in both California as we move towards a vision of net zero energy homes, as well as nationally. And our concern is if the New Solar Homes Partnership funding is reduced, we're going to see, of course, less energy efficiency, less solar, and we will not see a clear path towards that vision of net zero energy homes in 2020. And one of the most essential parts of the program is predictability and transparency. This is essential to the business planning because these projects really take a long time. It takes about 3 to 4 years or more to build out these developments. And so the builders really need to have the reliability that the funds are in the program and that they will be in the program when they finish the development. We're seeing builders make significant investment in product redesign and engineering, energy enhancement, energy efficiency enhancements, rebranding and marketing, and pushing the policy more towards the integration of energy efficiency and solar. And lastly, I just wanted to say that the New Solar Homes Partnership is, this program is highly equitable and that it serves broad regions across the state. And there's a broad price range from the entry-level home and starter family homes. So we're seeing participation of all ages, ethnicities, and educational backgrounds. We do agree with SEMPRA, as they stated earlier, that we think that the funding should be protected. We've been very concerned that the funding has been, the funding that was earmarked for this program has been transferred to other uses, and so we would just encourage you to ensure that there is funding for this program as we move forward, and to ensure that the funding is protected. Thank you.
Next, please.
Yes, I'm Julie Malinowski-Ball. I'm here representing the California Biomass Energy Alliance. CBEA is the trade association of the state solid fuel biomass power producers. That's wood waste generating electricity. There's 33 plants around the state, across 19 counties, just over 2,000 jobs. We come at this issue, the Renewable Resources Trust Fund, which we've been participating since in its inception, a little differently. You know, you're not looking to this industry to grow enormously like you are with the solar and maybe the wind industry. You know, what we're doing and using these funds for in the past is to actually to help the industry stay on its feet, to continue to collect wood, to continue to help local governments meet their landfill diversion requirements, continue to help the Central Valley meet its air pollution goals by clean air goals, by making sure that we don't open burn agricultural waste crops and deal with the forestry waste issues and help out with the Healthy Forests initiatives. But you know, what we've looked at in the past is something that this fund has helped the industry and the existing facilities and all those jobs. But we, like you are right now, we've kind of stepped back and looked at this fund and figured out, is this a good use of the dollars going forward? We say it actually has worked. It's been very successful. We've kept these facilities online, generating clean renewable technologies, clean renewable energy. But now it's time to look to reassess it and see how we can maybe do the funds a little differently and help out the existing facilities a little differently. And one of the ideas that we came up with was, you know, if we could use the existing funds to actually get at the fuel, because frankly, it's all about the fuel for a biomass plant. It's half the facility's operating costs. We have to go out there, we have to collect it, transport it, get it to the plants, and when we take that fuel, there's a true environmental benefit to the regions in which the facilities are located. And one of our ideas was to look at a fuel incentive, to take the money that we get today that actually supplements the contracts, that maybe worked in the past but is not the smartest idea going forward. Let's take that money and get at the harder to get, more environmentally beneficial fuels. For example, orchard removals. You know, my friends in the growing community know how hard it is and how much more expensive it is to get that fuel out of the orchards and to a biomass facility. And my friends in the forestry area agree that cleaning up the forest, providing fuel reduction efforts is the way to go. And you can't do that unless there's a little extra money in there to get that stuff processed and transported. So what I would say is that this has been an essential funding source for the facilities as they exist today in the past. And frankly, there's a better way to spend it going forward in the future. We keep hearing the words good bang for your buck. This is absolutely a good bang for your buck. This is a quantifiable, verifiable, and in the end, what you have is a great report that shows cleaner air and healthy forests, and that's where we would like to see PGC funds go in the future. We're open to other things and how you preserve this industry, because obviously we're the base of the IOU's renewable portfolio. We'd like to keep it that way, and if there's an opportunity in the future, grow even more. But we're open to ideas, but this is kind of where we're at right now.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you very much. Michael Bocadoro on behalf of the Ag Energy Consumers Association. And I want to pick up on a couple of points that were made previously, and it's looking at solar, you can see an industry that has benefited from the public goods charge, and it's come down in price significantly to where it is competitive today. We hear that all the time from the utilities as we're trying to negotiate contracts for some of the other emerging technologies like biogas. So going forward with the public goods charge, I think it's very important for the legislature to look at those emerging technologies. We've got the state's largest dairy industry in the state, as Mr. Valadeo is well aware. We're lagging many of the other dairy states, though, in terms of development of biogas projects. We have a tremendous amount of residents in this state that create tremendous amounts of waste, and wastewater treatment agencies also have a tremendous ability to create biogas and clean energy in California that's currently going untapped. And so moving forward, it's very important that we target some of this funding for emerging renewable technologies like biogas and incubate this industry like we've done solar, so that we can bring down the cost, reduce the risk, bring down the financing costs of these projects, and sustain these technologies long term. If we can develop 100 to 150 megawatts of biogas power in California, we believe we can get this technology to a point where it is self-sustaining. It's not today. We struggle as we try and negotiate bilateral contracts with the utilities that we're too expensive. We're over what they're seeing in some of their auction mechanisms and some of the other processes they have to bring in renewable energy. So it's going to be critical as the legislature looks at these projects and looks at extension of the public goods charge that we identify ways that we can bring along some of these renewable technologies, incubate those industries so that we can broaden and diversify. Biogas is a great technology. It's not only renewable, it can be base loaded, it can be peak loaded, frankly it can be stored under certain scenarios. It's a tremendous asset that we're currently allowing to go untapped in California. And so as we move forward, my final point is let's find a way to make sure we include funding for biogas-specific projects to ensure that we incubate this industry and get it to the point where it can be self-sustaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Mignon Marks, and I am the Executive Director of the California Solar Energy Industries Association. CalSEA was formed in 1977 by solar companies doing business in California, and we include solar manufacturers and distributors, but the core members are small businesses, the companies that are creating jobs and paying taxes in local communities. These licensed contractors include veteran-owned, minority-owned, and women-owned businesses. CalSEA supports reauthorization of the public goods charge because it funds important projects for our members and their customers. For example, it supports research on how and where to integrate interconnect distributed generation safely and reliably on the distribution grid. This reauthorization is an opportunity, though, to refresh the program and ensure that the program funds are contributing to the state's policy goals. And CalSEA would like the PGC programs to place a high priority on helping to site renewable generation where it's needed in local communities. Lots of work remains to expand the use of local renewable generation, including efforts to bring down the high cost of permitting, grid interconnection, and distribution system upgrades. So thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, I know you had a question.
I had a question of the biomass and the speaker that referred to biogas, one of the questions that we have in doing this is whether to do specific amounts for different kinds of technologies, which tends to then become a fight over maybe what I would characterize as a fight over scraps, or whether we should allow flexibility and have each one of those technologies be able to compete in some kind of way where they have to demonstrate the efficacy of that technology and how much they're going to get for it, and then be able to get and qualify for grants in that way. So I guess the basic question is flexibility in the RRTF versus a massive fight over who gets what dollar.
I've been saying all along this year that we need to identify the holes. Where are the needs? And we've been getting, the stakeholder meetings. We've been getting comments on a lot of holes in the energy markets. What do you really need? And I think for the biomass industry, as opposed to the biogas industry, the biomass industry has identified a specific need, and that is help us get that harder to get, more expensive, and more environmentally beneficial fuels to get. I would say the biogas industry has identified certain needs too, and I think there's opportunities to set aside pots for each of these technologies, because I think everyone's been pretty darn specific about what their needs are. Is there enough money for everyone? Absolutely not. But I think we've been able to identify a dollar amount that we think gets you something quantifiable, something worthwhile. And I bet you that answer is true for the rest of the technologies. You don't see some technologies up here right now because maybe the issues aren't as big and they're not as needy. Maybe who you see in front of you right now are maybe some the more needy technologies, and I think there's room for pots of money for that.
I would agree. I think the technologies are very different. The needs are very different, and in the case of biomass and biogas, that where we are as an industry is very different. They're established. The plants are all built. They're all financed. They need help to sustain. Biogas is just the opposite. They're not being built today because they are more expensive to permit in California. Well, we can get through that if there is funds available that buy down part of the capital costs. We can't get the projects financed because of the existing programs that are available for the sale of our energy. So if we can buy down some of that capital cost, make the projects more economic, we believe we can bring down the costs long term to where they are self-sustaining and not be facing the problem that the biomass plants are. We can't get started. And so you have to have the separate pots, in my mind, to identify those emerging technologies that you want to encourage. Biogas is a fantastic one because it's not just renewable energy, it's methane destruction. And we all know methane is a huge greenhouse gas, and we're going to need, utilities are going to need greenhouse gas credits at some point. This industry can provide a tremendous amount of those greenhouse gas credits, but we got to get off the ground.
Well, I want to thank you guys, and we're going to make our way to our ratepayer advocates. I know we have TURN and the Division of Ratepayer Advocates, Matthew Marcus, and we have Lenny Goldberg from TURN.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. I will be brief because the lateness of the hour. And I want to stay on your first question, which is about the public goods charge, not about all the things that we're doing, because those are all great. Why do we need a public goods charge? And I would say, going back many years, 1996 we needed one under deregulation. 2001 we needed them for the electricity crisis. By 2007, on renewables and energy efficiency, they had succeeded so well that they were incorporated in rates. Now we have an RPS, fully gone from 20% to 33%. So we have a huge renewables market. Energy efficiency, the PGC itself is $250 million. The amount spent by the utilities is $1 billion. That money is completely rolled in with the money that is charged in rates. So we would think, now we believe that the energy efficiency program should be greatly reorganized and have a document here that we'll give to you. You'll be hearing from some of the local government folks today who believe that the energy efficiency program should be reorganized, and we support their efforts. I think we have agreed with them over the years. However, the question is, should all this be done? I believe, and here's the cutting to the chase, the legislature should give direction to the PUC about how it should run its energy efficiency programs. Now, I would say financing would be a big piece of that. Decentralizing administration would be a big piece of that. I'm not sure we'll get agreement on those aspects. So if we don't, we leave it to the PUC. If we can get agreements on what the energy efficiency program should look like in the legislature, that's great. But as Randy Chin testified, the PGC can get ripped off. I would suggest that we they don't even need authorization. So let's go to the other two. Peer, I think you want to say take up to X amount, 70 million in rates, but not guarantee that. Make sure that projects come forward that meet the criteria, that we can get up to, let's say, if there's $30 million worth of good projects in a year, that's great. If there's $70 million in benefits, that's great. So what we need to do is not a public goods charge, but to say, we authorize the expenditure of up to this amount in rates. Now, question is, how do you make the decisions? And that, Senator Padilla and you are all trying to work out, how do you make sure that when these projects come forward and we do authorize subsidies for research, which we think we should, how's that decision going to be made? But don't let's set a pot of money out there and say, let's encourage everybody to come get it. Let's say here, if it's worthwhile and meets the criteria, up to $70 million. Now, Renewable Resource Trust Fund, you hear a bunch of cats and dogs, really. You have this project, this holdover, and that project, and this that's been done, and that's been done. And I think we have to ask serious questions. What is the public benefit? What is the benefit to the system benefit? Will this become self-sustainable? So when I hear Michael Boccadoro saying a little bit of help in biogas is going to get us there, will a little bit of help in biomass get us there? Will a little bit of help here and there be eventually sustainable? Because otherwise we're just talking about endless subsidy programs. We would oppose that. We think storage is very worth considering because there are system benefits. But the other question that really has to be asked, and I'm not sure how the process works itself out, is does this require a subsidy? You know, we did CSI. Well, we're at our 10th year of our subsidy, as you know, although you were out when we said this. We don't think we should be adding to the solar subsidy, the CSI subsidy, but so be it. That bill passed. But what level of subsidy needs to be provided? Will it become sustainable? Are there system benefits? So from our perspective, when we've looked at storage, obviously energy efficiency should be done as much as it's beneficial. That's a separate issue. When we've looked at other subsidies, though, we could argue that storage would be a good one, but does it have system benefits? Will it be sustainable? Up to what amount do we subsidize and by how much? So that's our brief testimony.
David Shukian.
Thank you, Mr. Colbert.
I'm David Shukian, Deputy Director for the Division of Ratepayer Advocates, and I will make my comments brief as possible. I did provide a handout that goes into a little bit more detail on some of the issues we have had with one part of the public goods charge program, the energy efficiency part. In general, we support the public goods charge reauthorization. Overall, we think it is probably a good program the best program to coordinate a lot of the research that is happening around the state. One of the things that we continuously see, regardless of having a public goods charge or having a peer program, for example, is that utilities continue to ask for individual what we would call research and development project. And we often defer to say, hey, look, we have a peer program. We have a program that ratepayers are already funding for this kind of process that actually develops research. We don't need to have individual utilities do their own research without coordination. So we think that continuing this is a good way to actually keep that as coordinated as possible. A couple things, as Assemblymember Skinner said, a couple tweaks that we think could make the program much better. One, we do think that there should be more ratepayer oversight and participation in evaluating how the various programs are operating. But the big program, as Lenny said, is the biggest problem we see is how energy efficiency has been implemented in California, specifically by the Public Utilities Commission and the investor-owned utilities. We think that basically, if you look at on this slide 3 on this presentation here, actually just go straight to the slide. The cost that the utilities are spending on energy efficiency, as Lenny said, is about $1 billion a year. The actual cost has increased about 50%. The goals have only increased by about 5%. And on slide 4, you'll see that we're not even meeting those goals, that the goals are about 60 to 70% of what we're supposed to be achieving. And in fact, even with those lowered goals and not achieving those goals, the Commission has awarded incentives for the utilities for doing that work with ratepayer money. So we think that there's a better mechanism that could be adopted in having a different structure, control and oversight, and actually control and design how this program is implemented through having industry participation, POU and local government participation, as well as the IOUs continuing to evaluate what is the best way to achieve energy efficiency, the goal, the overall goal, not just, programs that provide CFLs, for example, or individual projects, because that is not achieving our overall goal of reducing demand. That's really all I have.
Thank you. In this interest of time, I'm not going to ask any questions until we get all our panelists up. So next we have the environmental community and local government. So if you're here, please come forth from the National Resource Defense Council, Union of Concerned Scientists, Los Angeles County, Mr. Choi, I think here he is. City of San Jose, Mary Tucker, and City of Santa Monica, Susan Monves. In no particular order, whoever's ready, you can begin.
I'm ready. Good evening. Howard Choi with Los Angeles County, and we support the reauthorization of the Public Goods Charge Fund. We, as Mr. Goldberg indicated, we believe it's critical for the legislature to give guidance and direction to the Public Utility Commission and the utilities on how to make the program better, and that's a fundamental purpose of that. I want to talk specifically about energy efficiency, the role of local government, and provide some suggestions on how the legislature might inform the process at the Utility Commission. By giving an example of what L.A. County has accomplished. L.A. County manages $200 million annual utilities budget. We've completed, in maybe 10 years, nearly 400 energy efficiency projects in county buildings. That expertise can be rolled out to other cities very easily. We've discussed this with legislators, with the governor's office, and it's implemented now in your bill, Chairman, of how to regionalize this expertise instead of trying to give it to every single local jurisdiction. It can be regionalized to be cost effective. We're also looking to regionalize financing programs to get public building projects accomplished as well, so that we all do it together instead of individually. On the community side, L.A. County has acquired over $54 million in stimulus grants, and we've used that to develop a property assessed clean energy financing program for all of Los Angeles County, with over 80 cities that have passed resolutions to join that program. That's PACE financing, which I'm sure you're aware of, for residential and non-residential programs. We've developed a non-PACE financing program for commercial properties, for non-residential properties that private building owners can take advantage of. That'll be rolling out this July. We've also initiated folks to join a regional climate action plan to develop an LA County-based climate action plan for all 88 cities and unincorporated county. So what I'm saying is we can do this, we can do it together, we can do it cost effectively, and our example has the potential to be duplicated in other areas in the state, and you're going to hear from my city colleagues about ideas that they're doing that can be regionalized very easily. So we think it's critically important to provide this guidance or this direction in legislation to the Commission and to the utilities to move into this new arena with local governments.
Thank you. Continuing the local governments, I'm Mary Tucker, the energy manager for the city of San Jose, and as such, I manage our city's energy efficiency and renewable projects on our own municipal facilities and projects for our community. This includes coordinating the Silicon Valley Energy Watch, which the city designed to serve all of the cities in Santa Clara County, except the city of Santa Clara, which is a municipal utility, both on the municipal and the community levels. And at the local and regional level, the Silicon Valley Energy Watch, with public goods charge funds, has been out in the community providing the technical support services and much needed incentives and installations for other cities, small businesses, and nonprofits, many who do not have the in-house resources for getting these energy efficiency projects done. We know there are opportunities for local governments to leverage and administer these and other innovative programs on a larger regional scale, providing more local jobs and meeting local and state energy and environmental goals. A few quick examples of the ways that we're leveraging. City recently piloted an employee group purchase of solar installations with our local credit union that provided very low interest loans for its members. We secured costs at 40% below market on these solar projects. We're expanding that program to the region in partnership with several more credit unions within our area, one that has more than 74,000 members in Silicon Valley high technology companies and with assets of more than $1.4 billion. A program that will leverage and provide more energy efficiency and renewable energy. We have transformed the market. We're partnering with new clean tech energy efficiency and renewable energy companies to test their emerging technologies in our own facilities, helping them with the needed beta testing on their products, new LEDs, waste-to-energy programs, and a variety of others. We've partnered with other local governments in our region to come up with a standard permitting form for solar residential installations that ensures an installation that meets safety, fire, and other standards. It's these kind of creative, collaborative, and effective programs that local governments can do best. Without the public goods charge funds, we lose a much-needed source of funds for leveraging more private investments, helping local governments and their communities reduce their energy use, and creating a sustainable, competitive, and local energy efficiency market. The City of San Jose has adopted aggressive goals to increase our clean tech jobs, reduce energy use throughout our community, and increase our use of renewables. We support the extension of the public goods charge funds and look forward to working with our state legislators and other partners to achieve all of our goals. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Susan Monvis. I'm the Energy and Green Building Administrator for the City of Santa Monica, and I'm here to support reauthorization of the public goods funds and the opportunity for local governments to access these funds for implementation of municipal energy efficiency projects. Santa Monica has been implementing green building energy efficiency and solar projects since 1990. These projects support the city's sustainability goals and local economic development goals because these projects create jobs and keep investment in the community. Excuse me. The city has run the Solar Santa Monica program since 2006 and has facilitated the installation of over 2.5 megawatts of solar on over 300 rooftops. However, in these economic times, reducing our operating costs, our utility costs, is a key budgetary goal. Through our partnership with the utilities, in our case Edison and the gas company, we've identified about half a dozen energy efficiency projects that will receive incentives. However, the city has to come up with the capital to fund the projects. we envision a more collaborative approach in which cities can work regionally with other cities to leverage resources, to share expertise, and to achieve economies of scale. One of the things that we're doing right now is exploring the establishment of a community energy solar and energy efficiency fund that would be a partnership between the city and private investors. Somewhat like a PACE program, this would provide the means for the city to find funding for its own municipal energy efficiency and solar projects and provide a reasonable rate of return on the private investors' investment. So we see these innovative approaches as the ways that the state is going to achieve its energy efficiency goals.
Chairman Bradford, my name is Dan Kolb with a Union Concerned Scientist. Thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you for staying late and listening to all our comments, and the staff as well. I'm going to confine my brief comments to the renewables portion and the peer portion of the public goods charge. I know others will talk about energy efficiency, which we also are generally supportive of. First and foremost, of course, we strongly support a 10-year reauthorization of the PGC. We feel effective use of these funds will provide economic and environmental benefits to California ratepayers, both in the short term and the long term. And while we believe that targeted investments in renewable energy are indeed opportunities to create clean tech jobs in our state while meeting our renewables requirements in law, we also know that there are economic and environmental benefits of research and energy-related research that may occur much further down the road. In other words, we're not going to get all the benefits to our spending in the year that the money is spent. That's what research often is needed for, to do things that are longer term. There needs to be a balance between short-term deployment priorities and longer-term energy-related research priorities. In terms of the renewables program, let me just rattle off 5 areas that we think the program should focus on. There may be other areas as well, but these are 5 that we think should certainly be included. 1, identifying and supporting deployment of solar DG and other DG technologies that create jobs that could help bring down the cost of these technologies over time, and that could help displace the need for some future fossil fuel power plants. And I acknowledge that, for example, the new Solar Homes Partnership may need to be modified. But if that's the case, let's modify it. Let's not get rid of it. Let's modify it so it better coincides with market conditions and is what people need it to be. But we should certainly not eliminate that program by any stretch of the imagination. 2, we should provide directed financial assistance to the biomass and biogas producers to substantially reduce the air pollution emissions associated with the combustion of and the fuel material transport associated with this type of electricity generation. We support biomass as it is today being included as an eligible renewable resource, but let's try to clean it up. It's not perfect. There are problematic emissions associated with it, and if there could be a modest amount of money from this pot of money to help them do that, then it'll be a better, even cleaner resource, which brought with broader support in communities around the state. 3, support energy-related green-collar workforce training programs to help meet the needs of California's growing clean energy economy. 4, support emerging renewable technologies that may have demonstrated that they work from a technological perspective but lack the financial capital to bring the product to full commercialization. And of course, 5, assisting local governments. I think there are a few of them sitting right here, in resource planning relating to the permitting, to facilitate permitting, and which leads to development of both utility scale and DG projects around the state. In terms of the peer program, and we are strong supporters of the peer program, and there are many facets to that program. Again, we recommend the following. There are 4 quick bullets here, and that should do it. This may not be the only 4 things that it should be spent on, but these are 4 general things to keep in mind. Please make sure that the PGC funded research priorities prioritizes research that relates to our clean energy policies in the state, the 33% RPS, AB 32, energy storage technologies, the bill that was passed last year, SB 375, energy efficiency programs, of course, and even AB 118, which is currently falls under a modest portion of the peer program, of the PGC funding. Keep in mind that we can't know today what all the research money should be spent on 3 to 5 years from now. The Commission and any coordinating council that may exist will need some flexibility, with parameters, of course, to make timely decisions. If we have to get new legislative authority every time a good prospect comes forward, then we could lose timely opportunities to leverage private sector money and possibly even other public sector money. So let's not, while legislature wants to provide direction that makes sense, more transparency and so on, let's not hamstring the Energy Commission and the Coordinating Council too much. Let's not go too far in the other direction. Let's try to find that right balance with giving them some certain amount of flexibility. Of course, there needs to be a balance of basic long-term research as well as later stage research that is more closely related to clean energy deployment efforts. And finally, pertinent research on mitigating and adapting to the environmental impacts of the use of our fossil fuels, our electricity-related fossil fuels, as part of the PEER program should be continued to be part of that program. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Sierra Martinez, and I'm representing the Natural Resources Defense Council. In shortening my comments, I'll incorporate by reference all of UCS's comments on renewables and only speak to energy efficiency and PEER. NRDC wishes to express its strong support for the long-term reauthorization of the public goods charge in all of its programs in a modernized and improved fashion. With respect to the energy efficiency programs that the PGC funds, these programs have put California at the top of the nation for energy efficiency and delivered significant benefits to customers in California. Over the last 10 years, several $1 billion in net benefits to customers in California. In addition to these monetary savings, the energy savings from these programs displace power plants, and along with those, the associated emissions, delivering health and environmental benefits to customers in California. These programs also enable us to meet our state goals. Energy efficiency is our strongest tool to fight climate change, and the current AB 32 plan to mitigate against climate change relies heavily on energy efficiency programs, so it's essential that this funding continue. With respect to meeting our renewable energy state targets, energy efficiency makes it cheaper and easier to meet those targets because it decreases the number of power plants that we rely upon. It also provides a significant economic stimulus as well as a powerful job creator. Past estimates show that 1.5 million jobs have been created in California due to our history of energy efficiency programs. A recent study commissioned by the PUC shows that in 2020, over 200,000 jobs will be created due to our investments in energy efficiency. If we fail to fully reauthorize these programs, we could jeopardize the benefits being delivered to Californians. However, we do not want to continue just the status quo, and we think there's always room for expansion and improvement. Adjustments to these programs should be made and are being made at the Public Utilities Commission through the evolution of the program cycle. For example, in the present portfolio of programs approved by the PUC, there are on-bill financing programs targeted towards addressing the financing barrier that we face for energy efficiency. Furthermore, the vast majority of programs are targeted at in-home installations and retrofits under the current adopted portfolio by the PUC. Looking forward over the next 10 years, the markets will change, the technologies will change, as will the barriers customers face. Therefore, we recommend that the guidance come as broad policy guidance and not overly restrict the funding for these programs. These programs need to remain flexible and nimble to adapt to future conditions. Using this broad policy guidance will allow the PUC to do its job more effectively and deliver changing programs. With respect to the PEER program, it's essential that we have state-run, long-term, aggressive public interest RD&D in order to develop and deploy the clean energy solutions that we need to meet our climate change mandates in the most cost-effective manner possible. These benefits have come directly to customers in the form of customer bill savings, as well as business opportunities, new technologies, and job creation. The PEER funds also leverage other funds by providing critical matching grants to recipients in the order of over hundreds of millions of dollars. While the PEER program has delivered significant benefits, it was reauthorized 10 years ago, and we think it could be modernized and reinvigorated. We believe there's room to increase transparency and accountability by requiring a strategic plan that ensures that investments will be done in furtherance of our state energy and climate goals. We also think that requiring the peer advisory board to meet on a regular basis will ensure that stakeholders have an ability to provide input as well as improve the coordination of the research. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now to the best part, our public comment. And I always hate for that to be last, but if there are folks still in our audience who are interested in making public comment right now, please come forward at this time. No public comment? Oh, Aaron, you get a twofer, huh?
Thank you for staying to this late hour. Mr. Chair, Aaron Niemela representing the California Energy Efficiency Industry Council. I think we just want to echo a lot of what you heard on the renewable and environmental panels with regard to innovation. I think that, you know, our folks, the energy efficiency industry, believes that innovation requires the ability to be dynamic and to adapt. And if these programs become too prescriptive, that ability goes away. That's not to say that we wouldn't support additional accountability, not in the form of prescriptive things like hard caps that limit your ability to appeal to, in some cases, the most underserved customers who have the least amount of capital and may require the most intensive outreach, which caps may inadvertently have the impact of achieving. I think instead we would suggest clear and uniform objectives that are consistently measurable. I think certainly there's been some debate about whether the current standards are and whether they are consistently measured across the board, and then holding the right entities accountable for meeting those goals, and then of course have those objectives tied to a definition of success that you know makes sense to the legislative stakeholders, whether that's demand reduction or whatever that definition of success is. Again, we don't think one size fits all for a lot of the outreach and innovation, and so you have to build in that amount of flexibility. And then finally, I think we would like to see, as some of the other groups said today, some stability and consistency in funding, because again, you're balancing the short-term sort of dynamic needs of the marketplace and trying to accommodate those with long-term goals of investment and innovation, and you have to know that the capital's out there to achieve those. Thank you.
Great. Well, let me first thank all of you, our panelists who have come forward today to give their input, whether it's in support or in their feelings that the program might have run its course and it's no need to continue. And I respect both sides of those views, and even our folks such as Mr. Goldberg, who has seen benefit, but at the same time is voicing caution in some areas, and that's important. And as we move forward with, be it my bills, AB 723, or Mr. Williams' bill, AB 1303, or Senator Padilla's bill, we will do that with the understanding and the comments that have been made not only here today, but on the Senate side, as well as the various stakeholder meetings that we will continue to have as we shape this policy. Because 15 years is a long time to continue to feed at the trough of ratepayers if, in fact, you cannot show direct benefit. And I think there has been a lot of good, but at the same time, there have been some challenges here. And we would all have to agree that, you know, more regulations, more targeted goals, or more attainable and quantifiable goals is important too in order for this to move forward. I had great concerns initially when we started talking about the reinstitution of the public goods charge, and the first thing I wanted was accountability, and that's the only reason that I'm moving this bill forward, is because I feel we can put those safeguards in, we can direct those monies, because we cannot continue to ask ratepayers to continue to fund what sometimes is immeasurable, you know, I shouldn't say advances, but immeasurable objectives that we say are energy efficient. And as one stated, it's no more than handing out some CFLs. And do we really measure energy savings by handing out CFLs? I do appreciate the county, Mr. Choi's comments as it relates to a regional approach. And I would only ask Mr. Choi if he felt the COG, some of the council of governments that are now working, such as in the South Bay, have that shown benefit in dispersing money to targeted areas, or is it something bigger than that that you're considering? When you talked about your regional approach, if you didn't mind me asking you that question.
No, the COGS have been. Thank you for your question. The COGS have been successful in implementing energy efficiency for their cities, but I still consider that a limited region. We can take what the COGS have done. There are 7 COGS in Los Angeles County alone. We can take the best things that each of them are doing and expand this not only in LA County, but Ventura County, Orange County, Riverside County, et cetera. So, yes, we're looking at an even larger scale to cover the entire state.
So would a county, kind of like energy efficiency team, would that deal with all of LA County, and you would have one in San Bernardino and the various 58 counties? Would that be something, a model that you would be looking at?
So for LA County in Southern California, I would say yes. Los Angeles County resources can be provided to COGS, other cities, other counties, at an incremental cost of what they would have to spend to do it themselves. And we're actually trying to pilot that with Edison and the PUC right now. We are attempting to do that pilot. You've got other examples. In San Diego, you've got the California Center for Sustainable Energy, a 501c3, which has enlisted members, public agency members, to accomplish the same thing. Other examples would be local government joint power authorities that have come together to provide the same type of services in a region. So there are different models that can be applied, and we think that they can be applied effectively up and down the state. What is the number to effectively cover the state? You know, just my colleagues and I just thinking about it, it might be on the order of 6 to 10.
Okay. And there was also discussion about, I guess, a firewall or separation of funding sources from utilities, maybe creating this third-party entity that directly funds, and I think it ties closer to the workforce development, because I think if we start directing these monies to local businesses directly for them to go out and do some of the energy efficiency programs directly, I think you're going to find you get a greater bang for your buck. You'll train this unemployed or underemployed workforce, and especially young folks. So I'm hoping that we find some value in bringing this, if not on the high school level, at least on the community college level, where some of these programs could be funded, and go out and be direct hires to do some of this energy efficiency. Because what I've heard over the years as a local elected official and as someone who worked for utilities, the time it takes to get, you know, your funding together, your permitting, to get the work done, finding a contractor. So, and no fault of the utilities, but I think it's too many hands that are in this money right now. And if we can streamline it to allow for a pool of money to be directly for workforce development and contracting directly with the resident or the commercial entity, I think we're going to find a more efficient spend, so to speak, for those dollars. So I could go on all evening as to what it is that we could not do as it relates to public goods charge. But if there's no other comments or follow-up by any of the folks who are in the audience, I'm going to adjourn this hearing and thank each and every one of you again for your testimony, your comments, your input. And I hope as this moves forward, the 3 bills, the 2 current in the Assembly and the 1 in the Senate, that we will continue to work together and make sure we have a program that's worth sustaining and continuing, but make it as cost effective and efficient as possible. So I just want to say thank you all, and that concludes the hearing, the Utilities and Commerce Committee hearing today on, what is today, June 26th, 27th, seems like 28th. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, ladies.